Hello and welcome to Dig School, cross-curricular learning themed around archaeology. This session is Picturing the Past, where we'll be thinking about how to present your finds to enhance knowledge, understanding and enjoyment in the people who are reading your report or looking at what you've discovered. Key questions will be how to take a great finds photograph, why some finds need to be drawn, and how you can depict your finds in the best way in your archaeological report. So the first question then is, what makes a great finds photo? So note down some of the key points in your workbook. The key instructions for this are at finds.org.uk, but they apply to any find really. Generally, you need a photograph of the front, the back and the side of a find. Put the object on a plain background, usually either completely white or completely black, and non-reflective. Make sure all the surfaces are an equal distance from the camera if you can. Make sure the object's evenly lit. Daylight is the best light to use, but you don't want direct sunlight because you don't want deep shadows on it. And support the camera so that you don't shake when you're taking the photograph. The object should almost fill the whole of the camera, so if it's small, get the camera very close to it. Don't use zoom because that will reduce the clarity of your picture. Make sure your camera is properly focused. If you've built up a support for it, get it in focus and then just click the capture button and then repeat for each view. So if you don't have a tripod at home, you can easily make up even under lockdown conditions, you can make up a support for your camera with a couple of books or a box. If your camera's on your phone, you lay that across the top, get it in focus, and here I'm using black velvet as a background. And from that, you can get a photo, something like this. Make sure you've got a scale in the photograph and make sure you've got some sort of information about where the find's from. And then once you've taken that, you can then crop the photo afterwards to get the scale visible and all of those fine details. Phones these days, many of them have very, very good cameras, so you don't need a particularly special camera, and that will give you a digital image that then you can put straight into any report you're writing. This is a Victorian cross that turned up in a test pit excavation, decorated with turquoise and probably just red glass, designed to look like rubies perhaps. So one of the questions is black or white background. So typically finds tend to be photographed against white backgrounds, but you can also use black. So have a think about which you think is the best. This is the back of a mirror, medieval mirror, sort of that you'd have like a clamshell sort of type mirror that would have opened up. And you can see it's had a picture of his Jesus on the cross here with probably a disciple or Mary next door to him there. And you can see how different the two images look. The advantage of black is that you don't get the deep shadows, but perhaps you think the image on white is clearer, and perhaps it's more adaptable to putting into different sorts of documents. So here's the front of that. That's the back of it. Again, which do you prefer, the black or the white background? So just have a go, have an experiment yourself, find any object, and if you've got a phone handy with a camera on it or any other camera, digital camera, just try taking a photo on a black background and a white background. See which you think works better. Which do you prefer? And write down why. So if you've got lots of finds, not everyone is going to need a special separate photograph. Keep that for the sort of special, unusual finds. Mostly you'll be photographing your finds per context. If you've got a lot of finds, you might want to separate them out into different groups. So for this one, there's only a few finds here. So the animal bone and the pottery are all in the same photograph, but they've been separated out with the animal bone on one side and the pottery on the other. If you want to, you can get quite creative with laying out your finds. There's something quite aesthetically appealing about getting all your objects beautifully laid out and then taking your photograph. And of course, that's what lays behind making objects attractive to look at in museums as well. There's some fantastic examples of this on the internet. So these are just a couple from Twitter, from Lego Lost at Sea, collecting plastic items off the beach where shipwrecks, believe it or not, have deposited huge amounts of plastic stuff, including Lego, which gets collected. You can see there's a sort of aesthetic here. All the white coloured objects have been put together against the blue background that's been chosen to show off the colour nicely. And then on the right, another Twitter image, just the plastic toy soldiers, again found from on the beach. Last week in Dig School we were looking at finds which included plastic toy figures. And you can see here a whole load of them have been laid out to create an artistic image. This is the sort of thing can make a nice cover for your report. If you're really creative, you could even think about doing some watercolour paintings of some of your finds. And remember, you're probably one of the very few people who will see your finds for real. Anybody else will be looking at photographs of them or other images. So the images you take are your chance to really show people what they're like, because you're the one who can see them for real. When you look in an archaeological report, what you tend to see is lots of drawings. And this is actually not just because photographs are more expensive to print, it's actually because drawings show you more. And a drawing is interpretation of what you've seen and how you've understood the find. Particularly if you've got examples of pottery like this, where you've just got a few bits or one piece, you can actually show what the whole pot would have looked like, so you can understand what that piece of pottery was part of. So you can see the image at the top here, there's just a rim sherd and a little bit of base, the bits that are highlighted in black. The rest of the pot has been reconstructed through that drawing, through comparing with other examples. So this is a chance for you now to have a go at this yourself. So this is some other finds, again from a 1 metre square test pit, some Victorian pottery. Now if you've just got sherds from the side of the pot, it's quite difficult to do a reconstruction of what the whole thing was like. But in this case, we've got some bits where we have actually got bits that go right from the base right up to the side. In fact, they're just here. So here are the bits. They sort of join together like that. And you can see them there in the photograph. Now what you can do now is follow these step-by-step instructions to draw this pot. So in your workbook, you've got a page there to do this. Now I'll show you each image, talk you through it, and then you take as long as you want to draw each stage. So the first thing an archaeologist drawing a pot will do is use a rim chart. And this is designed to show how big the rim of the pot was, even if you've only got a small bit of it, like we have in this one. We've only got some of the rim there. So what we do for that is place the pot on the rim chart, and then we can just read off the diameter or the radius of the rim. So here you just move the pot up till the curve of the rim fits exactly with the curve on the rim chart, and then read off the number, and that's 9. So that's telling us that the radius of this pot was 9 centimetres. And what you can also learn from the rim chart actually is what percentage of the rim is actually surviving by matching it up with the vertical radiating lines on the pot as well. So here we know that there's about 17.5% of the rim is actually surviving in this piece of pottery here. So drawing your pot from this, you know that your radius is 9 centimetres, so you need to draw a line in your workbook which is precisely double that, so 18 centimetres, marking the point in the middle, and that is the diameter at the top of your pot. So the next stage is to measure how tall your pot is. Now for this pot, because we've got the two pieces, we can do that. We can see its height from the base up to the rim. And you can see here it's been positioned carefully here with a vertical face. So you need to measure it, the distance from the surface it's sitting on up to the top of the rim. When you've measured that, and you can see on this, it's about 8.1 centimetres, 8 centimetres and 1 millimetre. So that's the height of your pot. So you've drawn the diameter. Now draw another line, exactly that length, exactly 8.1 centimetres, to show the height of your pot. So there you've got the height marked on the ruler and you've got the height on your drawing. The next step an archaeologist will do is measure the base of the pot, again using that rim chart, exactly the same principle, only this time you're actually using the base of it. Same principle, match up the curve of the base with the curving lines, and that will tell you the size of, again, the radius of the base. So here you can see it's 4 centimetres. So the base of this pot is 8 centimetres across. That's the whole diameter, because the diameter is twice the radius. So then draw that in at the bottom of your pot, and you've now got a sort of T-shaped diagram which shows you, the 3 lines show you the width of the top of the pot, the height of the pot, and the width of the bottom. So there's your key measurements. If you're doing this with a pot of your own that you found from your own excavations, or a broken bit that you've got, then you can do exactly these same things with your own pot. So once you've got those basic dimensions in place, you then carefully draw by eye the outline silhouette of your pot. That's the outer side of it. So that's the outer side here, this side that you can see in profile here. So have a careful look at this slide and then draw the shape, remembering, of course, that the midpoint is that point at 9 centimetres across on your T-shaped line. And you're just drawing one side of it first. Once you've drawn one side of it, then draw the other side. You can even fold it over and trace it, in fact, because it's going to be identical. You're assuming that your pot is symmetrical about that centre line that you drew. Okay, once you've got both of those sides drawn, you then need to measure how thick your pot is. You may only be able to do this at the rim with a ruler, or you may be able to actually sort of measure across the thickness of the pot with your ruler. So you can see from this pot here is about 2.5 millimetres thick. Then draw in on the left-hand side of your pot that thickness of that rim all the way through just to the middle line. And this is showing an imaginary cross-section of your pot if you'd cut it in half and you were looking through the section of it, which is effectively what you are doing in the picture we've got of our pot here. Just do that for the left-hand side and colour that cross-section in into solid colour, black. What you've got here, of course, on the pot we're drawing, it's actually got a base as well, so make sure you draw that shape in. You've already drawn the outline of it. Make sure that shows in the base that you draw and the colour that you shade in black. So once you've done that, what you can then do on the right-hand side is show what the pot would have looked like from the outside. So this is a chance to put in any decoration, and we can see the decoration on this pot. It's got blue decorated lines, so you can draw those on the outside of your pot. So what we're drawing is on the left-hand side, we've got the cross-section of the pot as if you cut it in half so that anybody can see how thick the pot is. And on the right-hand side, it's showing what it looked like from the outside. But of course, this is showing the complete pot. It's a reconstruction drawing of the complete pot. So when you've drawn on the decoration, you can then move on to the final point, which is to put a scale on. So you've been drawing this at 1:1 scale, so put a scale on that shows, say, 10 centimetres, ruled out to the right scale, marked out, so that anybody else looking at your picture will know exactly how big that pot is, and then put the date on it and your name. Partly because you're proud of it, but partly because it's useful to know who's done this drawing, because it's your technical drawing and it's good for people to know who's done these drawings. So that's given you a chance to do your own pot reconstruction. Have a short break now, and then we'll have a look at some other archaeological drawing when we come back. Okay, so in part 2 of Picturing the Past, we'll be looking at drawing another type of artefact that comes up quite often, but if it does come up, it can be quite important, and it can look very difficult to draw. And this is Flint artefacts. So in another dig school, we looked at the Amesbury Archer, that burial, and the publication of that has some fantastic drawings of lots and lots of flints, because there were lots of flints with that particular skeleton. And these are all drawn in the publication, the technical publication that was produced about this. And you can see here some of the detail of those drawings. And these are drawn by archaeologists, often quite soon after the finds have come out of the ground. As soon as they've got back to the lab, the specialist looking at the flint will sort through them, identify the ones that are particularly special and need detailed drawing. And you can perhaps see already from this notebook here, actually how much more detail you can see on the drawing compared to the photographs. And that's why usually we need to do drawings, because again, the archaeologists are usually the only people who see these finds, but lots of people will read the books. So the book is a chance to put in the illustrations, which are a chance for the archaeologists to show exactly what that find really looked like when they were looking at it. You could turn it round to see it properly in the right light, in a way that a photograph is very difficult to capture that. So what we'll do now is go through some step-by-step instructions for you to draw this flake here. So you can see it here. I'm turning it around there. And you can see much better close-up pictures taken using exactly the methods I showed you earlier in the image here. So when you're drawing flint, the most important thing is to understand how it was made, because that'll help you see the features that you need to draw. So flint is a glassy type of stone, and if it's hit and a chip comes off it, those will often have very sharp but really quite strong edges. So they're very useful for making stone tools. And there's a picture here showing how stone tools are created, really. You have a nodule of flint, you might have sort of given it a good bash, which will take off a large flake, create a good smooth surface, you then turn it over, and then you can work from that smooth surface to create lots of flakes, like you see on the left-hand side here. So you get a series of these flakes, and each one will have a bulb of percussion, which is the point where it was hit and where the force radiated out from, which usually creates a curved bulge shape. There'll be a bulbous scar, which is where a little bit of the flint usually comes off at precisely the point of impact, and that can be tiny, maybe 1 millimetre across. There'll then be ripples where the force of the blow has travelled through the flint, rather like when you throw a stone in the water, you get ripples running away from where the stone hit. You get ripples running through the flint where the force has travelled through it. And then you'll get little sort of flake scars as well, where if you've taken off more than one flake, your flake will have sort of the remains of the previous flakes that have been removed on the back side, on the dorsal side. So the easiest thing to do is have a look at this flake that you're going to be drawing and seeing all those features. So here on the dorsal face, that's the back of it. You can see there's a flake scar. That's where a previous flake had been taken, a couple of flakes have been taken off that lump of flint, and then the flake we're drawing has been taken off. You can see the cortex. That's the outside of the flint. It's a bit like the crust on a loaf of bread, perhaps. It's the outside. And then if we look at the ventral face, the picture of it on the right-hand side, you can see that bulb of percussion, and you can get a feeling, I think, from the way the light's flowing on that, of the fact that it's bulging, and you can see the ripples as well showing in the flint. The distal end is the end that's most distant from the impact, and the proximal end is the end that's most close to the impact. So the bulb of percussion will always be at the proximal end. So there's a lot of technical terms here, and also to remember the dorsal face is the back, like a dorsal fin on a shark is where the one that you see coming out of the water. The ventral face is the front of the flint, is its sort of stomach, as it were. So those are the terms. Now, you've got this picture in your workbook, so now you'll be able to draw a drawing of this flake by following the step-by-step instructions for a different piece of flint. So this is a Neolithic scraper. It's about 5,500 years old, turned up in Herefordshire. Scrapers are really common. They're flakes of flint that have then been retouched. So you have a big blow to get a big flake of flint off, and then you just very carefully pick away at it around the edge to create the surface that you want. And that's why this flake at the top end, the upper end, has such a curved line to it, because someone's deliberately chipped it into that shape. And scrapers are really quite common across the world. In the UK, they range from 800,000 years ago, when we've got the first humans on these islands, right up to the Roman period. So huge amounts of time they span. And they're used to work soft materials such as sort of skins and wood and so on. And you can see here on this one, you've got the bulb of percussion and the retouched end. It's quite difficult to see the details on it. So the way to draw it is, first of all, you put the artifact, you put it on some paper, and then you just draw around it. Start with the dorsal side up, so the bulb of percussion is at the bottom against the paper. You're working, you've got the dorsal side upwards, and just draw around it. If you're drawing the example in your workbook, that this one that I've showed you, then you can trace the outline from the picture in your workbook. And then put the artifact next to the outline you've drawn. You might think you need to change it a little bit. Maybe it's the bit where it didn't go quite right, so just tweak it a little bit. When you're happy with it, go over it with a slightly thicker line, working in pencil. Next, you need to add the ridges. That's the outlines of all those little scars, if there's any other bits of flakes that have come off. Start with the main ones and just look carefully to see what you can see. Just put on as much as you can see. If you've got a real flint to work with, you can obviously look at it really carefully. If you're working from one in the photograph in your workbook, or go back and put those images that I had back up on the screen, spin the video back and have a look at the ones in careful detail. And they can sometimes be difficult to see, so just turn them around, have a good look, get a different light on them so you can see their faces reflecting. Take as long as you want. Okay, so the next thing to do is, when you're happy with that, go over the lines again with a slightly thicker pencil line, so you know which your final decisions are. And you can see from this how much more detail is evident from the drawing than it's really possible to show from the photograph. So hopefully your drawing of the flake that I've given you has the same effect. You can see more in your drawing than it's easy to see in the photograph. Next, draw in some of the detail, and this is the sort of thing that brings it alive even more, and it's also really useful for people who study stone tools, so somebody who's a specialist might look at your find in the future. If there's any cortex, that's the outer bit, the crust on the bread, as I described it earlier. You can see it'll feel rough and bumpy and might be a different colour. So on this bit, you can see it's a sort of greyish colour there. You can see that on the outside, the cortex surviving there. So just colour that in with sort of small dots, just a little bit of sort of stippling. It's a conventional way to show cortex. Then looks for the ripples on the flake scars. Again, these are the ripples of the force travelled through the flint from the blow. And they radiate out from the point of the blow. So you can see on this, the ripples on the main scars all radiate out from the bottom because that's where the bulb of percussion is, that's where the flint was struck from. So the ripples will curve out from that. But then on this example, the smaller scars left by the little chips that have been retouching the edge to make it that curved shape, they go the other way. Again, they radiate out from the point at which the force was applied. So if someone was working the flint by retouching it like this, the ripples will come out from that point. And then on this particular example, the big chunk taken out at the bottom, again, you can see that the ripples radiate out from the point at which the force was applied. And this notch was probably taken out to make it easier to hold or easier perhaps to be fixed to a handle. So once you've put all those details on, then it's time to draw the profile. So this is the side of it. Hold the flint or the artefact on its side, and again, have a look at the shape that it is there. Move it along until it sits next to the picture you've just drawn. Flints are very rarely flat when you draw from the side because that's the way that the force travels through them. That's why you get the curved bulb of percussion, which is the thicker bit, and you get often this sort of S-shaped curved profile. And you can see that in this example here, and you can see it in the example that's being held in the picture. So here, just hold it, look at it, and carefully draw the shape. And if you're doing this from the example in your workbook, again, you can trace it. Try and get the top and bottom at the same height as the example that you've drawn of the side you've already drawn. Make sure they're all the same scale. You might want to rule a very light line across the page so you can make sure all your drawings of all three angles of the flint are the same size. Okay, once you've done that, it's time to draw the other side, the ventral surface. So move the artefact along a bit further along the page. Again, keep it the same top and bottom, the same size. This side will probably be easier because usually there's only the one flake. You don't have to worry about all those various flakes from the previous work that has been done. You've just got the basic bulb of percussion and the bulbar scar, and then the ripples that have travelled through it. But do the same steps as before. And if you want, once you've finished, you can then add just a little arrow showing where the original flake was struck from. So here you can see the three sides of this flake. So you've got the dorsal surface showing that quite complicated series of flakes taken off before the main flake was detached, and then the little retouching marks that were done on it. You've got the profile showing how thin it was or how thick it was. And then you've got the ventral side showing the bulbar scar and the ripples that have travelled through the flint. And you can see how much more that's showing about kind of how the flint was made. How's your flake looking, having drawn that? So once you're happy with it, you can go over it if you want in a very fine pen. If you've got an ink pen, that's great. If you're really confident you've got a fine, nice biro and that's all you've got, then do that in that. You might even want to take a photograph or trace another image to do it in if you're using something like biro. Ink pen is best. So draw over it and make the outlines and the ridges, the main feature, just a little bit bolder, and the ripples just a little bit lighter, and the stipples a little bit lighter. That'll help the person looking at your drawing to understand it. And then if you've used ink, once the ink's fully dry, use a rubber to remove any pencil. If you've used biro, it's probably best not to do this because biro does smudge very easily, even when it is quite dry. Then use your ruler to add a scale, so you've got a permanent record of what size it is, and again, of course, your name and details of where it was found. And you'll end up with a drawing like this. So hopefully that's what you've created for either that flake that I gave you to draw that's in your workbook, or perhaps a bit of flint that you found from your own excavations. So there is the flake that I've given you to draw, and you can have another final look to compare how your three images of the dorsal face, the profile and the ventral face look, and how actually much more effectively they show how the process of how that flake was created actually than just a quick glance at the photograph. So you may have all sorts of finds from your test pits, and in fact someone who's been digging dig school found this bit of a leather shoe sole. And here's an example of drawings of a medieval, late medieval, early post-medieval shoe sole from Pontefract Castle. And you can see again, you've got that same idea, the drawings are showing the detail. So have a go at doing a drawing of this shoe sole, showing the key information. Again, you can trace the outline of it and just draw on the holes where it's been mended. And of course, if you really want to get creative, you can colour in some of your pictures, particularly if you've got recent pottery, which may be quite colourful. And again, it's a chance for you to show what colour that was. Other people will be looking at photographs, will be looking at them on different devices, and of course colours can be changed. A watercolour drawing can make a lovely picture, a piece of art of your archaeology, but also a good record of what colour it really was. So just as a final thought, just note down how making good images of finds, whether it's through photographs or through drawings, help people know and understand them. Why is it good to make a detailed drawing or a careful photograph? How does it help? And just remember, of course, that very few people will ever see your finds for real. It's your chance to show what they really look like. So I hope you've enjoyed that dig school. I hope you've learned how to take a great finds photo of those special items. And I hope you really understand now why some finds do need to be drawn, what a difference it makes to actually do that drawing. It helps the archaeologist understand the find, and it helps anyone else looking at the images to understand them as well. And you also had a chance to find out how to depict your find in the best way for archaeological reports, whether to take just photograph as a group, or to take an individual photograph, or to do a drawing of it as well. So I hope you've enjoyed that dig school, and that I'll see you again at another dig school sometime soon. Take care.